My name is Alex Thompson, and at 36 years old, I felt like a forgotten chapter from a book no one wanted to read again. My life had once been full of ambition, purpose, and bright mornings. But now, every evening I tied the knot of my black apron at Sterling Elegance, the most polished restaurant in Seattle, and stepped into a world where I felt smaller with each passing day. The restaurant buzzed with the clatter of polished cutlery, the hum of conversations, and the warm glow of golden lights reflecting off marble floors. Elegant customers filled the space, their laughter light, their clothes sharp and expensive. They carried dreams higher than the skyscrapers outside while I carried trays heavier than my pride. That night, like every other, I worked with aching feet and a tired heart. My faded white shirt clung to my back as I moved swiftly between tables, refilling glasses, balancing orders, and offering polite smiles that I no longer felt. This job was not my dream, but it was my survival. It kept me afloat after everything I built had crumbled. I was delivering cocktails to table 9 when the entrance bell chimed. It rang through the restaurant like a warning. I looked up and froze. Walking through the door were my foster parents, Robert Hayes and Susan Hayes, and their biological son, Dylan. They looked grand and confident, almost glowing under the chandeliers. Robert wore a crisp navy suit. Susan dazzled in an emerald dress. Dylan sported a stylish jacket. Every step filled with effortless pride. My heart sank. I had not told them about my job. I didn't want them, or anyone, to know that I had fallen so far from the man I once tried to be. But destiny clearly had other plans. Before I could even breathe, the manager approached. "Alex, they're your table. Please take care of them well." The universe had never felt so cruel. I walked toward them with steps heavy as stone. Robert looked up first. His eyes narrowed, then widened in amusement. Well, well. Look who it is. Alex the waiter." His words cut through the air, sharp enough for nearby customers to glance over. Susan's gaze followed, her expression cold and disappointed. "This is quite a surprise," she said. "We had higher hopes for you." Dylan leaned back with a smirk. "Man, your fall was bigger than I thought." I swallowed hard and tried to keep my voice steady. "What would you like to order?" But they weren't here for a meal. They were here for a spectacle. Robert mocked every item on the menu. Susan made remarks about standards and embarrassment. Dylan found humor in every small misstep. Each comment felt like a bruise forming beneath the surface of my skin. I forced myself to stay calm. This was my workplace. I couldn't lose control, but humiliation has a way of tightening its grip. When I came to deliver their main dishes, I felt something hit my ankle. The tray slipped. Plates shattered against the floor. Food splashed across the polished tiles. Gasps filled the room. I knelt quickly, hands trembling, picking up broken pieces while customers stared. Robert shook his head dramatically. "Same old Alex. Still clumsy." Susan sighed loudly. "This is embarrassing." Dylan smirked. "You should find another job." I bit the inside of my cheek, collecting every piece in silence. I needed this work. I needed my sanity. And I needed to get through the night. They paid their bill, and Dylan held out a $50 note as if offering mercy. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he tossed a handful of coins onto the floor instead. "Pick those up. You've earned it." I did. Because sometimes life forces you to crawl when you're desperate to stand. When they finally left, I stepped outside into the cold night. Rain fell heavily, soaking my clothes as I leaned against the brick wall behind the restaurant. The tears I had held back spilled freely, mixing with the raindrops on my face. For a moment, I wondered how everything had gone so wrong, years ago. I had been adopted by Robert and Susan after losing my biological parents in an accident. Their lavish home looked perfect from the outside, spacious, warm, filled with elegant decor. But inside, it was a place where love was measured and approval was rare. Dylan was their pride, their golden child. I was the responsibility, the adopted son who never quite belonged. As I grew older, I found my escape through ambition. I launched a small food delivery startup. It grew quickly at first. I married Emily, an accountant who appreciated my drive. We bought a home, and our son Oliver became the light of my world. Life felt promising, then everything collapsed. A crucial partnership dissolved. Technical failures tanked the app. Investors backed out. I lost every dollar I had put into the company. In desperation, I went to my foster family for support. Instead, they shut the door on me completely. That same month, Emily packed her bags and left with Oliver. She couldn't handle the financial instability. I stood helpless as the two people I loved most walked away. Now I lived in a tiny apartment with peeling paint and creaking floors, rebuilding my life from the ashes. One chilly afternoon outside the restaurant, I noticed an elderly man standing near the entrance. His clothes were worn, his bag torn, his face tired. The hostess scolded him, telling him to move along. Before he could stumble away, I approached him. "Here," I said, handing him my lunch and the $12 I had in tips. "Please take this." He looked at me with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling. I offered help whenever I saw him. "A meal here. A drink of water there." We exchanged simple conversations. I didn't know who he was. I didn't care. Kindness came naturally when you knew what it felt like to be invisible. Weeks passed, and I continued working hard. Then one crowded evening, everything changed. Emily walked in with her new partner and a group of friends. She froze when she saw me in my uniform. Her expression tightened. They made casual remarks, none kind, all sharp. An accidental spill created unnecessary tension. Emily demanded that the manager fire me. Before he could respond, the elderly man I had helped stepped inside the restaurant. To everyone's shock, he announced that he was Victor Sterling, the true owner of the restaurant chain. He had been observing employees quietly, disguised to see their character more clearly. He walked up to me and said, "Alex is one of the kindest men I have ever met." He asked Emily and her friends to leave. Then he handed me a note. "Come see me tomorrow," he said with a gentle smile. "We need to talk." My heart raced. My world shifted. For the first time in years, hope returned.
The morning after the storm, exhaustion clung to me like a second skin, but my resolve burned brighter than the sun rising over the wreckage. I told myself that if my parents could deny me in my darkest hour, then I would no longer waste a single tear begging for their love. I owed my children more than grief. I owed them a future. With nothing but determination and the help of strangers who showed more kindness than blood ever had, we began the slow, painful climb out of despair. Volunteers handed out blankets and meals, neighbors we barely knew shared words of comfort, and shelters opened their doors without hesitation. Each act of kindness felt like a small light in the endless darkness, and I realized that sometimes family is not born but found. Days turned into weeks as we pieced together fragments of stability. My husband found work in rebuilding efforts, swinging hammers and carrying lumber to earn what little he could. I took on 2 jobs, cleaning in the mornings, serving in a diner at night, my body aching but my spirit unwilling to surrender. My children adjusted, carrying their resilience like a badge of honor. At night, when they slept on thin mattresses in the shelter, I would watch them breathe peacefully and remind myself that every sacrifice was worth it. I was no longer the broken woman abandoned at her parents' doorstep. I was a mother forging strength from ashes. Then came the truth that set my anger ablaze. It arrived quietly, whispered by a neighbor who had spoken with my brother's wife. My parents had not refused me because they lacked space. Their house was large, with rooms standing empty. They had refused me because Jonathan insisted it would be inconvenient to share. He had poisoned their minds, painting me as a burden, warning them that my family would bring nothing but drama. And they had believed him, just as they always had. My blood boiled as the realization struck. They had chosen comfort and favoritism over compassion, lies over loyalty, but instead of crumbling, I let the betrayal fuel me. I refused to waste energy seeking revenge through bitterness. I would strike in silence, with success so undeniable that even whispers would echo louder than shouts. I poured my soul into a small idea that began at the shelter's kitchen table: baking. I had always loved it, and soon, neighbors who tasted my bread and cakes began asking for more. Orders trickled in, then multiplied. With the little savings we scraped together, I rented a modest shop space, painted the walls with my own hands, and opened the doors to what would become my bakery. It wasn't easy. There were nights I slept on flour sacks, mornings I rose before dawn, and days when exhaustion nearly broke me. But people came, not just for the food, but for the story of resilience behind it. They admired the woman who had been cast aside yet still found a way to rise. Word spread, and with it, my business grew. Soon, my bakery became a gathering place, filled with laughter, warmth, and the smell of fresh bread. Every loaf, every cake, every smile from a satisfied customer was a silent victory. Meanwhile, Jonathan's empire, built on arrogance and my parents' support, began to crumble. His business ventures, once praised, collapsed under the weight of his reckless spending and lack of discipline. Debts mounted, partners abandoned him, and the very reputation my parents had guarded so fiercely for him shattered in front of their eyes. I watched from afar, not with glee, but with a quiet sense of balance being restored. Life had a way of humbling those who believed they stood untouchable. Whispers traveled through town like wildfire. People spoke of me with admiration, of how I had endured betrayal yet built something strong. They questioned my parents' cruelty, asking why they had abandoned their daughter when she needed them most. Every compliment I received, every customer who praised my strength, was another thorn pressing into their conscience. They could no longer hide from the truth. Their shame grew heavy, and eventually, it drove them to my door. I will never forget the day my parents appeared at my bakery. Their faces carried the weight of defeat, their eyes searching for forgiveness. They had come, not as the strong figures I remembered from childhood, but as people broken by regret and desperate for help. My children stared at them with confusion, my husband with restrained anger. And I felt nothing but calm. They spoke of mistakes, of needing me, of hoping for another chance. For a moment, the old part of me, the daughter who had once longed for their approval, stirred. But she was gone, replaced by the woman who had built her strength from rejection. I looked at them, and in a voice steady and unwavering, I told them I would not become like them. I would not shut my door in their faces. I gave them food, a place at a table, because compassion was something they had never taught me but I had learned on my own. Yet I made it clear, they could eat, but they could not reclaim the space in my heart they had abandoned. In that moment, victory was mine. Not because I had outshone Jonathan, not because my bakery thrived, but because I had refused to let their betrayal turn me cruel. My children watched me, and I knew the lesson was etched in their hearts: strength is not found in vengeance alone, but in rising above without losing your humanity. As they left, I felt no triumph, only peace. I had closed the chapter of seeking love where there was none. I had found family in kindness, community in strangers, and purpose in my own hands. The whispers of vengeance that once burned inside me had transformed into whispers of resilience, of dignity, of victory without hate. When I tucked my children in that night, I told them softly that family is not defined by walls or names, but by love and loyalty. I told them that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, it means refusing to carry bitterness like chains. And I told them that the greatest revenge is not destruction, but showing the world that no betrayal can break you. I kissed their foreheads, turned off the light, and smiled into the darkness. The storm had taken my home, my parents had taken my trust, but neither could take my strength. I had built a new life from the ruins, and in that life I was free.